Real Madrid just secured their place at the top of La Liga in a very important win against Getafe. Getafe away has always been historically a difficult tie for Real Madrid. It was expected that this was going to be a highly contested match. Getafe looked to press the ball very high up the pitch, so Real Madrid found it very difficult for them to find those line-breaking passes to be able to find those transition opportunities behind Getafe's pressing. And when Real Madrid did have the ball in midfield, Getafe were very physical in trying to crowd out those spaces in the middle of the park. And so Real Madrid was then forced in many instances to play the ball out wide with not a lot of room for their attacking players to have any sort of room. There's many talking points in this match, including the fact that Arda Güler came off the bench in the 65th minute and absolutely changed the game for Real Madrid from a creativity perspective, because it's clear that Xabi Alonso identified Arda Guler as the guy who was going to be the creative engine in his team. And when you consider the fact that Xabi Alonso wanted to bring Arda Guler to Bayer Leverkusen when he was the coach over there, it's for this very reason, because he could tell that Arda Guler was the player who could play the final pass, and there's no player with more assists to Kylian Mbappe this season than Arda Guler. And Arda Guler is the player with the most chances created in Europe, the most passes, and so you're seeing the evolution of Arda Guler. He is a player that's being so decisive for Real Madrid, and this raises many questions about how Xabi Alonso will find the right system for the Clásico, and that's a video I'm going to get into in a whole separate video where I break down the Clásico, whether Arda Guler or Jude Bellingham are going to play the 10, because in today's match, Jude Bellingham played at the 10. But he was missing a lot of that match sharpness that he usually has. Whenever he had the ball at his feet, he looked like he was missing a little bit of that match rhythm. What we're used to from Jude Bellingham is a player when he has the ball at his feet in the attacking third, he's so decisive. But he just looks like he's 1 or 2 steps too slow right now. And that's why it's very questionable if he's going to be ready for the Clásico to start that match. Given the kind of form that Arda Güler is on, you may look at a system where Real Madrid plays with Arda Güler, Vinicius, and Kylian Mbappe up top. A player today who also started and looked very decisive was Eduardo Camavinga, especially in helping Real Madrid recover the ball. Eduardo Camavinga was so sharp in terms of his tackling, being tenacious off the ball. And it's those kinds of qualities that are so important for Real Madrid in terms of stopping the opposition's transition opportunities. And so it would be no surprise to see Eduardo Camavinga start the Clásico, especially because of the physicality that he offers you in terms of his two-way presence. If Real Madrid consider moving to a back three in that match in the Clásico, then a player like Eduardo Camavinga gives you a two-way presence. And you could see on many instances, Álvaro Carreras in the game today against Getafe, he would play almost as a third center back, and Eduardo Camavinga would be the outlet on the left-hand side, and he would then progress the ball forward either to Rodrigo or he would look for Jude Bellingham in between the lines. And so what he offers you is not only an option or an outlet in the build-up phase, but also that presence that if you need to press the ball high up the pitch, or if there's a transition opportunity where you need a guy like Eduardo Camavinga to help you win the ball, that's where he comes in very handy in being able to put in those tackles and be very helpful to his teammates in recovering the ball. So if you had to look at the performances today of Eduardo Camavinga and Jude Bellingham, you have to say that Jude Bellingham didn't do himself much of a favor to get himself to start the Clásico, whereas Eduardo Camavinga, his performance today, both defensively and going forward, was very sharp. And when you consider the fact that Eduardo Camavinga has not played a lot of minutes recently, he has looked very sharp in those few minutes that he has had. But another player today who struggled in many different instances was Álvaro Carreras. Álvaro Carreras, since the game against Atleti, he's sort of struggled to find his best form. The reason why he was identified as the next left back for Real Madrid for years to come is because of the fact that he was supposed to be the player who can both defend and attack, that he can provide both options for you as a team. Real Madrid didn't want to just rely on somebody who is good going forward, but defensively he can be very solid in shutting down the best right wingers in the world. And so you are seeing that from Álvaro Carreras defensively. Defensively, he's still looking very solid, and he's consistently played well when he's been off the ball in terms of his physicality, his 1v1 defending. But it's the ball progression when he's being pressed. That has been the issue for Álvaro Carreras. Not only is he not completing some of those passes and they're falling a little short, especially in those high pressure moments where you're expecting him to make the right decisions, he's also not choosing the right moments to carry the ball forward so that he can evade a press whenever he is being pressed. And so a lot of that decision making by him hasn't been spot on. He's been making the wrong decisions. And so the concern for Real Madrid is in the big matches, can he raise his level to make those right decisions in those high pressure moments? Because that's when it really matters. When you think about the fact that a player like Ferland Mendy is fit right now and he's starting to play with the first team, he's starting to train with the first team, Ferland Mendy may not be the best attacking fullback. One thing you know you can depend on him is he's not going to misplace a pass in a bad zone where he gives the opposition the ball, which leads to a goal. And you know for a fact that Ferland Mendy is very good in terms of his 1v1 defending. So from a reliability standpoint, if you want to minimize risk and you don't want to gamble with somebody who's going to cost you the match, you can see why so many Real Madrid coaches, Zinedine Zidane, Carlo Ancelotti, they liked a guy like Ferland Mendy is because of his reliability. Now I understand that the sample size is very limited and we need to be patient and give him the time to grow at Real Madrid, because the step up from Benfica to Real Madrid is huge. But again, we're talking about Getafe. We're not talking about being pressed in El Clásico by, Lamine and Lewandowski or Ferran Torres or whoever it may be. That's going to be the big test. He's obviously expected to start. But if we do play with a back three, then maybe we do see Álvaro Carreras play as a center back. But again, he needs to clean up some of these parts of his game where he's giving up the ball cheaply. But some of the other talking points in this game, we saw Rodrigo play as a right winger. We have not seen that since the Club World Cup. Rodrigo today looked sharp with the few touches that he did have when he was playing on the right, because he was able to come in on the inside, finding opportunities to combine with his teammates, which was creating a lot more danger for Getafe, and it was very difficult for them to contain. When you consider the options at right wing, if you had to prioritize in a big match Franco Mastantuono and Rodrigo in terms of reliability, and I go back to reliability, you know that Rodrigo has done it in the big matches. You know he has the experience and he's been decisive in a lot of these important matches. Franco Mastantuono today didn't look very sharp, and he was substituted, and rightly so, because on the ball he had a lot of bad giveaways. His decision making wasn't very good, and he didn't look very sharp even off the ball in terms of helping Real Madrid recover the ball. So something for Real Madrid to keep an eye on. One of the biggest things that young players struggle with is consistent form. Young players usually will have really good performances followed by some inconsistent performances, which is very natural as they develop as young players. But a player who has been consistently playing well for Real Madrid this entire season has been Kylian Mbappé, who is, without a shadow of a doubt, at this moment, the best football player on the planet. Hands down, no question. Because you give him a chance in front of goal, a decent chance, a half-decent chance, he's either putting it on target, testing the goalkeeper, or he's scoring from practically every good quality chance he's getting. And so when you think about Barcelona's high line and the fact that right now Kylian Mbappé, the way he's timing his runs behind the back line, it's been excellent. Think about when is the last time Kylian Mbappé has been caught off sides. Now, I'm not saying he's not getting caught off sides. What I am saying is, think about the number of offsides we had with Kylian Mbappé early last season by this point. He was getting caught offsides every single game. He was not timing his runs right. But now he's timing his runs to perfection. And not just that, and that's a sign of his confidence. The fact that he's taking his chances whenever they're presented to him, you can tell he's just oozing with confidence right now. And it's a scary sight for Barcelona because now they have to put a lot of focus and attention on Kylian Mbappé. They cannot give him too many opportunities that some of these other attackers in Europe are getting. I'm going to do a whole separate video on the Clásico previewing that match. But when you consider the fact that every single match that I've watched of Barcelona this season, they have given the opposition chance after chance after chance. And you're seeing a lot of these nines not take those opportunities because oftentimes it comes at moments in the game where you're not expecting it and you have so much time and space on the ball and you're being closed down by the goalkeeper. So you're in a 1v1 situation. And so many times these attackers, these strikers, they get caught off guard with that much time and space. And so they hesitate and they lose out on those opportunities. But really good performance today, I would say, by Vinicius as well in terms of coming on the pitch and creating havoc, getting players sent off, being decisive, creating opportunities. This is something we may see in the Clásico as well. Xabi Alonso rely on his 12th and 13th man to bring on players off the bench who are going to create opportunities, who are going to cause chaos. If Real Madrid chooses to press the ball very high up the pitch, then it's going to be absolutely important for them to rotate some of the players to keep fresh players on the pitch at all times. Solid performances today by both Tchouaméni and Federico Valverde. Tchouaméni today looked reliable. He looked like the same old Tchouaméni, winning many decisive headers, both defensively and in Getafe's half. One of the things that Tchouaméni is really underrated that people don't talk about enough is his aerial duels, the number of headers that he wins, especially in the defensive half. The number of times where Tchouaméni was winning those headers was absolutely important. And many of his passes out of the back were very consistent in terms of hitting their mark and not giving the ball up and not turning the ball over in bad positions. Important win for Real Madrid away from home. This is always a tricky match for Real Madrid. A tricky stadium. Getafe is never an easy opponent, whether it be at the Bernabeu or away from home. So an important win that takes Real Madrid top of La Liga. Coming off the international break, this is the first match Real Madrid has, which obviously is a tricky one. They're going to be undoubtedly working on the training ground to sharpen themselves up, to figure out the patterns of play and the best 11 for the next match. And starting tomorrow, I will be lowering the prices for my Patreon for this week for the Clásico for just 1 week, so that if you guys are considering signing up for Patreon, you can do it starting tomorrow, Monday, October 20th. I'm going to do it only for this 1 week ahead of the Clásicos if you guys want to get access to a lot more exclusive content ahead of that time. Thank you for watching, and Hala Madrid.